You send him 41,000 emails, 350 voice messages, 744 tweets, 48 Facebook messages.
Today is the June video, or the video made for June. Still in a critical condition. Problem still persists every single day. Internal breaking sessions, stripping out the power of my own life, furthering and worsening the brain dead, powerless, institutional self that's costing me every day of my life. They've stripped out every single bit of my sex drive, my sex power, and internalised it. They've pulled out all my ability to think for myself in a brain dead state. They've just continued with internal breaking sessions, stripping out significant, massive portions of my life. And it's obviously quality of life's been reduced significantly. Power in society is almost diminished. They've realistically made a job, or the system's made a job, with what I believe to phase me out of society, whether it be true or not. The fact of the matter is, internally, in an institutional self, they've stripped out a significant portion of my life, which they must have, or the system or officers must have, branded as mentally ill or criminal or deviant in some way. In other words, the job of institutionalization must have been approved, or must have been said to have had some positive effect for these individuals to feel as though that's the correct thing to do. The issue is, in 2016, they've stripped out significant, massive portions of my life within a year of being on a prison sentence, and internalised my entire life. So they've internalised my ability to sleep, ignorance, sex prowess, sex drives. They've internalised massive amounts of my life. So they must have said at some point, or it must have been known to the officers or the system, that what they're doing is for a positive reason or for a productive objective. But the fact of the matter is, the impact that's had on my life now, that's just getting worse and worse every single day, which is happening now every day up to 3,000 times a day, I am having my power ripped out and internalised, meaning my jaw's completely void. They've physically internalised their power, and it's squashing my internal organs because they've snagged my power and it's wired my jaw shut. Whilst in prison at the time, within a year of being in there, you could feel the process encapsulate your life, and they've just stripped out my entire life into it every day. So you're in a controlled state, and internally your life's almost in a shell, encapsulated, and they've stripped my entire life out of it in a controlled state. That's what an institutional self is. So essentially, they're just keeping possession of people in a controlled state, and it's cost me every day of my life. All they're doing all day, or all the system's doing all day, is stripping out more and more of my quality of life in society and internalising it. So they must have deemed it criminal or deviant or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, that's now cost me every day of my life, every minute of every day. And they'll say, that's what prison is, that's what we told you. But the fact is, they're wanting to cost me potentially potentially thousands of times the magnitude of what they're trying to say. So what I'm trying to say is this: they've stripped out my life that could be potentially criminal or deviant for my criminal record that's minor. Not necessarily minor, but it's not extensive. So for the criminal convictions I've got and the crimes I've committed, whatever their reasons for punishment is, or whatever their route for punishment is, that's their problem, that's fine. And you've got to pay the price for the crimes you've committed. But the fact is, these individuals want to internalise my entire life and internalise my sex drives, for example. They want to internalise my ability to think or sleep, for example. They want to internalise, or they don't want to, they're just outright doing it without any input from me and no consent from me whatsoever. They're going into my life saying that I'm criminal and stripping out massive portions of my life that's costing me every minute or every day of my life. They're not wanting to account for it when I turn up in a police station or a probation office, wanting to know what's going on. So I'm turning up wanting justice, not wanting justice. I need to get the situation resolved to carry on with my life. And they're completely ignoring me, and the institutionalization process is carrying on and on and on. It's internalised my sex drives, my sex power, so I'll never have sex, I'll never have children, I'll never be in an intimate relationship. And any intimate relationship that I do have won't be of authentic grounding, because it's been created synthetically just for evidence, just to say that they haven't done anything wrong. For example, what I'm saying is, with my sex drives or sex prowess internalised, I will never be in a sexual relationship. I will not get to experience my natural life because the system or the officers have decided they're going to internalise my power internally for what I can only assume is because they're saying it's criminal or deviant. But I've never been convicted of sex crimes or anything of a sexual nature. I've never been questioned or even been accused of sex crimes or anything of a sexual nature. So it makes no sense to me why they've internalised my sex prowess, and they're costing me sexual relations over the best years of my life, over my 20s. I've just lost my entire 20s in a controlled brain dead state to be used in a controlled state for what only I can say is for criminal and humiliation purposes, for degrading, humiliation and defamation purposes. And like I said, now as it stands making this video in June 2025, I've now been homeless for 2 years, nearly 2 years next month. So the process of institutionalization is costing me every day of my life. I've now spent more time homeless living on the street than what the original time in prison nearly was. So I've nearly spent more time on the street now, living on the street, because of institutionalisation and internal breaking sessions every day, than nearly, soon to be, more than what I spent in prison. So they're using a prison sentence from 2014, which is 11 years ago, and have now surpassed that living on the street because of the consequences of their rationalisation. They're saying a prison sentence has caused all this, which is a load of rubbish, because they opened an institutional self in 2006, which I still need justice for. So they've essentially created a job where they open an institutional self with the sole objective of controlling somebody's life for 15, 20 years and institutionalising them, costing them every day of their life. So as I'm making this video, I find it very difficult to word or try and portray the situation, because it's just, I'm not really planning or scripting these videos whatsoever. They're just me with my phone making the videos month by month, and the process is just getting worse and worse. So I'm having more and more of my sex drives internalised, more and more of my life internalised. The amount of pressure on my internal organs is vast. It's crime against humanity. The fact of the matter is, I shouldn't be in any physical agony or pain, and there shouldn't be any restrictions or barriers or any problems with sex, with education, with work, or even in day-to-day society. If they wanted to say that's mentally ill or apparently poorly, which is not my wording whatsoever or terminology whatsoever, then they're going to have to start getting further clarification and further. There's going to have to be more laws implemented on what they're actually doing with this, because they're costing me every day of my life. They've internalised my entire life and said that they're doing it for a not guilty plea for a £20 phone snatching. It's cost me potentially the net worth of £500,000 plus, never mind the quality of life that you can never put a price on. So they've made the decision themselves that me going not guilty for a £20 phone snatching 11 years ago is now going to continually cost me my life that's worth thousands of times the price of it. And the crimes they're committing against me are more significant and more severe by 1,000 times. I'm in physical crippling agony. I've never inflicted crippling physical agony on anybody. So, as well as that, I've never committed any sex crimes. I've never had anything to do with any of that nature. So what I'm saying is the crimes they're committing, usually, or most of the time, are thousands. The crimes they're committing in an institutional self 1,000 times worse than the crimes that they're putting through the local Crown Court and the local magistrates. In a week, I will be a victim of internal breaking sessions and control crime with institutionalisation worth 10 times what goes through my local Crown Court in Sheffield. So down the road, there's a Crown Court that will put through various criminals and various criminal acts this week. I can guarantee now that I've been a victim of crime more internally and with control over me than what will go through the Crown Court this week. Critical condition costing me every day of my life. Told South Yorkshire Police this in last February.